Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, Carlos Ulberg KO's Dom Reyes, might have become the number one contender, and says he wants to be the backup fighter 1 week later. Incredible. All in less than a round. Charles Oliveira, by the way, has a new opponent. We'll talk about that. And UFC 320 is deep. We're going to preview it. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con, and look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. All three of these guys with nice hair, bastards. Goes from MMA Junkie Radio in Las Vegas, my co-host on the MMA Junkie Radio show. Danny Segura, Dan in Miami, one of the top reporters in the game. Dan Tom, he's our fight analyst. He breaks it all down for us. He's also here in Las Vegas, and Goes is going to double up on the ones and twos. But before we get started, if you could hit that like button right now, guys, right now, it's a click. It's that thumbs up. It would really help a ton. So, guys, the UFC was back in Perth, Australia. Aussie.
Oi, oi, oi.
Oi, oi.
Nice. All right. So listen, guys, the card on paper didn't have this magnetic pull of any sense, right? On a late Saturday night, for crying out loud. And those guys had to go at 7 a.m. Like, the UFC tortured us there. But in the end, any type of face punching usually gets our attention. We're junkies, right? Anyway, Carlos Ulberg did do his thing. You can't ask for much more. Thankfully, someone did, because prior to the KO, honestly, the fight was not a barn burner, but the KO is the KO. Thoughts, Dan Tom? I want to go to you first, Dan, because you watch the fight in such an analytic way, right? Me, I'm just, watch it, come on, yelling, and I wasn't getting that. But did you see strategic things going up that set up that TKO? Was it, did that at least get you excited on Ulberg erasing that kind of boring win over Blachowicz and now putting himself in this prime position?
Dude, you know what got me excited, George? It was your Aussie, oi, oi, oi. So now I'm going to blame you for using Australian accents anytime the names like Jake Matthews come up or Navajo Stealing. But we're talking about, Dominic Reyes and Ulberg in the main event. Of course, and George, you're too kind to me, man. I got to say, folks, I watch fights a lot closer like you guys do, especially if I have action on it, right? I'm cheering like an idiot too. Not saying you're an idiot. I'm saying, I cheer like one, but
oh, I'm an idiot. Trust me.
But yeah, there wasn't much to go off of. It was tough. It was like, I picked Reyes going in, and I saw Reyes supporters, saying, hey, there wasn't, I guess his chin's gone, but there wasn't much we saw. I don't know how much we can say about Ulberg, which is fair, and I'm usually that guy. Right. And I think that, we could say that here. But as far as like your question, what set it up, I'll tell you, even though there wasn't much to look at, like I just said, it was an immediate bad. I had bad pits in my stomach as a Reyes backer. As soon as I saw him on the back foot, guys, and Ulberg coming forward, that was a big directional shift that was going to be bad for Reyes. And even as a Reyes backer, I was about ready to rip my ticket before even needing the official result there. And then next thing you know, Reyes kind of just jumped into one. It was looking like it was going to go over for a second. We're going to have a long staring contest a bit. Yeah. But yeah, that pressure from Ulberg drew it out of Reyes, and he capitalized. It was short and sweet, guys.
Yeah, and it's like, Danny, it's like it's all been erased. Reyes had this great moment with John Jones, and then he's even been chirping with John Jones over the past few years, while he's had this 3-fight run, right? All ending by KO in his favor. And we're thinking he could be back. Him and Ulberg. What about them two and Prochazka, Roundtree? We're asking about all four. And he just didn't show up, man. Like, he didn't let go of anything.
Yeah, he didn't, but I would disagree with you. I don't think it erased everything. It certainly was a big step back in the sense that if he would have won this, like, maybe he would have gotten a title shot. Like, certainly he would have been at least in the conversation. And it just feels like, he is very far away from that. But before this 3-fight win streak, we were already asking for the guy to retire and walk away from the sport just because his chin was absolutely nowhere to be found, and he just looked terrible. He didn't look great on Saturday, but he did beat 3 people prior to that and looked pretty damn good doing it. So, yeah, I still think he's a little bit in the mix, but certainly a big step back in his career. Let's see how he bounces back. I do think that Ulberg is a little bit underrated, and I think a lot of people are kind of down on him because of that Jan Blachowicz performance, but if the guy's able to find his flow and his timing, the guy can be really dangerous, and we saw that on Saturday. And I honestly think he could do that, what we saw on Saturday, to a lot of people in the division. So, but yeah, big mishap from Reyes.
But Danny, what I mean is, okay, I get it. 3 wins should count more than 1 loss. But he's also now starting to get a little higher up there in age. He wasn't the most active fighter after the John fight. But what I meant was all that talk and pressure that's going to come now, and they're going to talk about the chin again. Because in those 3 fights that he won, he did get hit in the chin. So now we're like, okay, he's back. It's holding up, and he's winning. But just the way he fell, starfished, I guess, or I don't know, just maybe not like my buddy Wanderlei Silva, but still, he just kind of like crumbled, man. And right away in my head, I was thinking, God, should he be fighting again? I guess that's what I meant. Was I went from he could be next to should he be fighting anymore?
I think I'm not there just yet. I think if he goes out there in his next fight and gets absolutely starched in the first round, then you go, okay, maybe what we saw in this resurgence or resurgence, what are they calling it? Resurgence. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was a little bit of fool's gold, and there wasn't really as much there as we thought it was. But I think because of that 3-fight win streak, and he did look good, as you mentioned, he bought himself some grace. So I'm not there to say to retire or anything. Let's see how he looks in his next few fights, because I do think Ulberg, I'm not saying he's going to be the next champion, but he's up there. He's a top contender, and he's certainly a title threat. And maybe Reyes is just not at that level yet. Maybe he's just a top 10. Maybe he's no longer in that top 5. But again, we'll have to see in these next few fights whenever he returns.
Also, shout out to my bud Nolan King. He's the one that used the starfish term the other day, and it cracked me up. I've been itching to use that one. It's just unfortunate it happened to one of the legends of the game, Wanderlei Silva. Well, maybe we'll squeeze in some talk about that. What just happened to me on the screen?
GG, you all right?
I don't know. I think you got starfish.
Yeah. I was acting out the starfish.
Yeah, that was perfect.
And it froze.
So shout out to Nolan King. He came up with that comment. I've never heard it before, but poor Wanderlei, man. He was just laid out like a starfish after a little brouhaha. We might get into it at the end of the show. Goes. Okay, man. How about you? What were your thoughts? What went through your head? It was quick, So Ulberg, Reyes, what went through your head on this main event?
Well, a little bit of what everybody said. Like Dan said, the body language early on, you could just tell when Dominic sits back and lets other guys do their thing, sometimes it doesn't go his way. And you just kind of had that feeling that he wasn't necessarily comfortable that night. I don't know what it was. Now, Ulberg's a tough cat, like a lot of people that fight him are going to have this sort of problem, but that bothered me a little bit about Reyes' performance. And then I'm a little bit with GG in the sense that before the 3-fight win streak, we were all kind of wondering, I don't think we didn't feel that Reyes couldn't fight. He can fight. He can be competitive. He showed us that in the 3-fight win streak. But it's at what cost? Because some of these knockouts have been pretty bad, right? And you never know. You don't want to wait until you get the one that really messes you up. You want to beat that. And so now that happened again, which it wasn't probably the hardest of strikes that we've seen in maybe other fights, but it put him out. And so you have to sit here and wonder, well, okay, he did what was right the first time, right? He kind of rested a little bit, built himself back up. But now he's older in age, so I don't know if he has the liberty of doing something like that again. And if he does, you feel like, man, if he just gets another one of these, it could be really ugly for him. So I don't know what to do with him going forward. I still feel like he's probably earned the right to take his time, go away from the sport again for a little bit, and build himself back up. But you have to ask yourself, at what cost, right? Is it really worth it? Do you feel like you can put something together that will get you in a title picture? That's a decision that he's going to have to make himself, his coaches, his family. But I kind of agree a little bit with all of you guys in this one.
All right, Goes. I'm going to go right back to you. We're going to focus on the winner here. So best to Reyes, honestly. We like the guy. Fellow LA dude, Kobe Bryant fan, everything Lakers. Ulberg won, and he says, I spoke with Hunter. I'm flying to Vegas. I'll be there, right? So to campaign to be next. Because remember, Prochaska and Roundtree are on the same card in the feature fight, and so there's a big spotlight on them. Everyone forgot about these cats. Did he secure himself a title shot possibly with that, or just strengthen his case? Again, I'm going to goes here. And did you hear that he's also wanting to be the backup fighter? Which, man, I felt like after watching Kyle Barallo go through a weight cut and then look flat 3 weeks later, I don't think I want to see those types of turnarounds anymore. And I would wish some fighters would look at other fighters and learn from that.
It's kind of a cluster of a lot of different scenarios, but I think before the fight, I thought to myself, if he goes out there and he gets a big emphatic finish, I think he's the front runner. I think he's sitting up there in the driver's seat. But there's so many things that can happen, right? Just 1 week away, now this week, that can get all twisted, right? And it all depends on really how that main event can shake up. There are certain people that I know, one of my buddies here on this broadcast and myself, we do not like rematches so much. Those potentials can start to pop up, right? And so it really depends on what happens in that main event. It depends on what Yuri and Khalil look like, right? Like Khalil is so he's got this aura to him that I think a lot of people caught on to. I think if he could go out there and just completely starch Yuri and say the right things, maybe with this new style that he's developed, maybe you could stomach him getting that shot. But it would be tough because Ulberg, I feel like, is the clear guy in the driver's seat, one whole car length ahead. You have to really do something at that point, I think, to knock him out of that. But, with the UFC, like, you just never know. You never know what they're going to do.
Danny Segura, do you agree? He's saying Ulberg's ahead of the winner of Prochaska Roundtree and by a car length. He's throwing some Formula One analogies in.
No, I don't agree with the goals in this one. I think he's in a good position, but he hasn't beaten. Well, I guess he did beat a former champion in Blachowicz, but that fight, a lot of people didn't like the way it went down and such. And then with Dominic Reyes, look what we're talking about now, right? Like, is he done? Should he retire? This, that. Beating Jiri Prochaska or vice versa, beating Khalil Roundtree, I feel like that does have more weight nowadays in 2025 than beating a Dominic Reyes. So, again, it all comes down to how they look. It comes down to timing as well. It comes down to what happens as well in the main event. We might as well see a trilogy there, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. So I think Ulberg is definitely in the conversation. I think it wouldn't surprise me if he finds himself in a title fight for his next bout, but I wouldn't be so sure about it.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dan, how about you, man? Let's go to you now. Ulberg, did he secure a title shot in any way, or is he behind the ones, the other two guys that are competing this week at UFC 320, including your boy Khalil Roundtree?
Yeah, I appreciate that shout. I also appreciate the rematch shout from Goes. And Goes is right as far as there is an aura that I feel like I could unbiasedly say. I mean, Goes mentioned it himself, and it's undeniable with Khalil, and he's got a bigger stage to perform on. It's always good to perform right under the division traditionally that you're competing in. Like, we all know this. So that door certainly could be open, as far as other arguments go. That being said, I do believe that the Anzac region, kind of also is popular for Asia, or for UFC for their Asian region as well. And you could plug in Ulberg, all over there, and by the numbers that maybe we don't have access to them. I imagine the UFC, they operate a lot off these numbers. I think those will be an ultimate deciding factor. And I imagine Ulberg perhaps draws as good as he looks, guys. I would not be surprised, right? Not that he draws crazy. I mean, we could talk about, ticket sales or viewership of his event, but as far as who he is, and not judging, him solely on this last event and the context of it, he did what he had to do. And when you consider that he's getting the flight out treatment, we also traditionally know what that means, right, folks? Not that always guarantees the next fight, but that news to me was kind of tips the scales in Ulberg's side, in my opinion. I mean, who knows? But the scales are tipped in Ulberg's favor, in my opinion.
Early on, Dan, do you think he can beat Magomed Ankalaev, Ulberg, from the case he's built over the 9 wins in the UFC?
I think early on, neither are going to be able to beat each other. I think it's a terrible matchup. I think it's going to be one of the. I know I've been whiffing on these overcalls, especially with like last night or last weekend with the call for 2 counter strikers, right? But I'm sorry, guys. Even with the streak I'm on, I'm actually confident on anything. It's that they're going to have themselves a good old-fashioned staring contest. Mark my words.
Okay.
With the house, that's what you're saying, Dan?
It's going to be a boring, stupid fight. Yeah.
Yikes. Okay. All right. Listen, there's a couple more things I want to discuss on Perth, and then we'll move on. But I did see one comment. It was from a guy named Blake. He's going, "Do they read the chat?" So I scrolled back. Let me give a couple shout outs because you guys deserve it. You guys are in here banging with us every Monday. It's only for a few more weeks where we start at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. It's because when this is over on this same channel, which you should subscribe to, you get the Dana White Contender Series weigh-ins. But Dana White Contender Series is on its 8th week, 8 out of 10. So there's 3 left, including tomorrow. And then we're back to noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. It's live. And yes, we do. Check out the comments. You can be a part of the show. Lazy Vet, a big shout out to you. And Shul Jubilee's gas station. Want to give a shout out to him or her as well, because I'm really not sure who that is. He did say, though, how bad is John Jones? Guys, did he get in trouble over the weekend? I don't know. Just blink twice if he did something stupid. Let's see here. 240s, wake and bake with my junks. All right, he's getting down. Steve Williams says he hasn't been around for a couple of weeks, but he's back. Masters of the Universe Classic, giving us a shout out as well. MMA Junkie checking in from Facebook. That's right. You can watch the show live on YouTube and Facebook as well. And let's see here. Joseph Boza, he says, I wonder if that was the best case scenario for the UFC on Saturday. Dominic Reyes was set up basically to have the Cinderella story of 2025. Interesting take. Pi Abundus, good morning to you as well. And Blake, if you want to leave something, I will get to a comment of yours or a question. I promise. Thanks for shaking this up and reminding me that, yes, the chat is part of the show. All right, guys, real quick. What happened here with Magny and Matthews, this controversy? I always come clean, man. I missed that because I was watching football. I had it on mute, right? And apparently Matthews is now appealing that he had a submission on Magny. I only caught the end where Magny actually submitted Matthews. 24 wins. That's gangster, Magny. But yeah, goes talk about this, man. This controversy. Matthews is saying, hey, look, this should have been over prior to.
Yeah, I had to watch it a couple times, but I thought the referee did the right thing in the sense that when you saw Magny's arm drop, he went in to kind of test the arm and see if it's just completely limp. I thought he made that decision a little too quick, though. He went from that arm to just jumping right in there. And he did that, and you clearly hear the bell sound after that. However, he had waved off the fight. You see his arms and everything. So he had made his decision at that point. Now, Magny could have been just going out, or he could have been okay. But when he got up, he seemed pretty fine. And the referee just decides, let's just keep going. And you can't really do that. So I could see him maybe getting a no contest out of this. It's crazy that Magny was able to turn things around and get his own submission later on in the fight. It makes it even more frustrating. But I think he's got a pretty good case here.
All right, Danny Segura, you want to weigh in? You think, fights normally don't get overturned, but this one was a little different.
Yeah, the referee fucked up in this one. And I think it was a great breakdown from Goes. Like, he did the right thing in terms of, like, let me check if this guy's out or not. But and I'm not advocating here for against fighter safety and whatnot, but when it comes to grappling, getting choked out for like a second longer, it's not like taking 5 extra shots from somebody once you're already out, So I think he could have just made sure a little, like, just gone through a procedure, I guess, where he made sure that really Magny was out. He didn't really do that. He just kind of assumed, stopped the fight. He clearly stopped the fight, by the way, because the bell didn't ring. Once Magny was protesting because he wasn't out, the bell rings, and then that's when I feel like the referee, and again, it's an extremely difficult job, didn't really stand on his business and wasn't decisive. And I feel like indecision in this game is the worst thing. Even if you make the bad call, but you're decisive about it, okay, that's one thing. But being indecisive, he was kind of just like, I don't know what happens, and then everyone went back to the corner. So he's like, I guess the fight goes on, but he needed to make a call, and he didn't, and that's why the fight proceeded. But yeah, totally understand Jake Matthews' sides, and I think it's totally reasonable what he said in his Instagram post. reacting to the fight where it was something like it's a whole different game to like switch back on once you think you've won. Like you literally just put everything into a submission, adrenaline dump, you're the victor, and all of a sudden, no, you got to fight this guy for 10 more minutes. That's a tough ask, man. So I do think, and shouts out to Magny, because what he did was still incredible. Like he came back and won the fight, and by submission. But I do think that Jake Matthews got screwed here, and I do think the best result here for both would be a no contest.
Blake in the shout out. No, it's not the Blake show, but I did promise him a shout out because he did say something funny. He says, new mythical fighter dropped, third round Magny.
100%.
All right, Dan Tom, how about your thoughts on this, man? What happened with Matthews and Magny, please?
Yeah, I think that was a solid point by Danny as far as like decisiveness. I know that doesn't change the fact that, people would have been upset either way because, if he did stick to his calls, Magny supporters would have been upset, right? Magny would have been upset. But there is something to that, even when it's a bad call, like you almost see it on their ref's face, especially if they're, kind of like an honest guy, like a Jason Herzog and whatnot. Even they stand to it. You can almost see it in their face, like, sorry, they're almost apologizing to the fighter, but not saying they did the wrong call, but they're just like, I'm sorry, man. I called it, you showed this is what I thought. That's the decision, and there is something to that. And even though I really agree with what Ghost said, I worry at the end there as far as the appeal goes, because we know how commissions are. You can't, but you can't help but feel for old Jake Matthews there, Jake Matthews. And how about these Australian refs, guys? Like, what does it take for them to stop a fight? We got John Sharp letting Mark Hunt get killed like 50 times against Stipe Miocic. We got Steve Percival that's been letting guys like Anthony Peroshko AFK opposite Ryan Bader forever. Like, it's so weird not to hear Steve Percival get booed. And then we get whoever this guy is coming up, right? Like, and then it's funny because not only do they like not stop fights, they almost like not stop them. Everyone's like, oh, hometown bias. Like, not in Australia. Dude, if you're Australian, the referees will be like, man up. No, that wasn't a finish. No. You didn't get finished. No, you didn't get the finish. No. And they just let you keep going there. It's crazy, guys. Sorry. For those of us who've been watching the sport for a while, know what I'm talking about.
The Hippo got a shout out.
Yes. I love that nickname, the Hippo, man.
Remember he used to come out to Kickstart My Heart? Like, and this is like in the mid to late aughts, he'd come out to Kickstart My Heart. And you see it on his face, like, dude, this guy was probably in his like early 30s when this song came out. Like, he's reliving, like, that's how old Perosh was. Shout out to Perosh, baby.
Perosh,
yeah. All right. Real quick, because we have to move on. Give me another highlight from Perth, Australia, and then we'll put a bow on it. Danny.
Man, I gotta shout out Alexia Thainara. She made her debut against Molly McCann and submitted her, and she was fully embracing the moment, being in enemy territory, this and that. Here they put her in a difficult fight, just her second UFC fight against Loma Mugume, and she's gotta go all the way to the land down under. So I think she's great for the division. She's got good skills. She doesn't seem fazed by the lights of the UFC, even though she's a rookie. I do think this girl's going to be ranked. I do think she's going to be in title contention at some point. She's got it all, man. Just really excited to see how far her career goes. One of the better Dana White Contender Series signings we've seen in recent times.
And for those that didn't see the fight, who was her opponent again, Danny?
Loma Mugume. Am I pronouncing that right?
No, I'm just busting balls. I always give you props when you do the Latin fighters. You do it so well, but I used to struggle with that one too. And finally I heard Michael Chavello or someone Loma Lukmumi or something like that. But yeah, that's a big win for her. I like her too.
Yeah,
goes
Tom Nolan. I had a good time watching his fight. I thought it was an even matchup and a little back and forth, but Tom got the job done, and I think he's going to put together something pretty decent. I think he's a guy we need to keep an eye on.
All right, we're almost at my turn. Dan, who do you got? Don't take mine.
Don't worry. I do want to mention my favorite name to say though, which is Nivejo Stealing. I hope you shout out the second coming of Chopper George. Anybody seen Chopper here? I'll just say ticket sales was one of my highlights. It was shout out to by the way, Submission Radio had awesome videos like shown before and after the arena was filled out. But there was definitely a lot of complaints about that. And I know that opens up a whole nother conversation, but I did feel like I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see people kind of start taking notice of this trend. And hopefully it makes the UFC, bolster their cards a bit when they go to these markets and charge the prices that they do.
Yeah.
What was it, 7 billion?
Yeah. Might as well be.
I really got a kick out of Joe Martinez. He just gets down on the mic, and then when he announced the main event, he threw in what I did at the beginning of the show. Show Aussie, 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 and they all said, "Oi, oi, oi."
Yes.
And then he did his thing, where I always think his vocal cords are just gonna like burn out or something, because he says, "What's his saying? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Make some noise. Are you ready?" And I always think he's like gonna burn him out, but that guy's just a true professional. I really hope he gets.
You
his
should
day
do that
longer.
at the start of every SBC show. GG.
I don't have those type of vocal cords, man. I'll be gone, and one of you guys will have to fill in. Guys, there was some fight bookings over these last 14 days. Goes and I did a Q&A last week. You can always go back to these shows, by the way, and catch previous ones. And here's why I also mentioned that, because I know some of you might say, guys, we move on. You can always bring receipts if we done goofed up, right? Because we're here every Monday. And so we might say things, and then you can put a pie on our face if they don't result months later. But yeah, anyway, during the time off, we had Gamrot is filling in. Mateus Gamrot is filling in for Rafael Fiziev. He's now facing Chucky Olives on October 11th at UFC Fight Night 261. Danny, that's the right choice.
Yeah, I love this matchup. It's going to be a grappler's delight. I think this is a really, really good fight. I even like it more than the Rafael Fiziev one. And even though that might actually be more action-packed, obviously, because we would imagine that it would develop a little bit more in the striking realm, I'm just really curious to see how Charles Oliveira's jiu-jitsu and submission skills fares against Gamrot's control and wrestling. So I'm actually really excited about this one. Shouts out to Charlie Olives as well for taking fights against these guys that a lot of people don't want to fight because they don't have the biggest names, but yet they're very, very skilled. Always respect a guy that's, former champions, got status, and could easily sit and just, ask for an easy fight or just a better matchup. So yeah, I like it. I think this is a solid replacement. I don't think we're losing much here.
Yeah, and all this goes down on October 11th, so we're only a few weeks away. So big shout out to Mateus Gamrot stepping up here on fairly late notice. Did you like that one, Goes? Or I know you were campaigning for Benoit Saint-Denis, but there's rumors for him. I don't know if they've been published yet, but there's some rumors going on for him too.
Yeah, no, I think it's gonna be a good fight. I like it at the end of the day. When you look at Olives, man, like his losses come to Topuria, Sarukian, Makhachev. Like he only loses to the top dogs, and Gamrot is a tough dude, man. So like he said, like Danny said, I think it's gonna be really fun, especially when they hit the ground. But I think we're gonna get our money's worth.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a former champ. So Dan, when's it over for Charles Oliveira? Like I know a loss would hurt him big here, but with a win, like, is he back? And I know we have that list of Pimlet and Gaethje and Sarukian, but he's never really too far out, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to frame it, George, because that's the big question here. Like, I agree with all the guys' points and what Danny said. I also agree that I like this matchup better for Oliveira. That being said, it has trap fight feels because he is hosting in the hometown. It is a guy who's coming in on shorter notice, but Gamrot's a guy who's always ready, right? And I think this is really going to answer, can Charles Oliveira hold up? I mean, even a younger version of him, which wasn't as good of a version, albeit a younger version, struggled with some of these matches, right? Guys who would, grapple back with him, right? Like Ricardo Lamas, Anthony Pettis were able to submit him, right? I know that was a long time ago, but, sometimes you'll see things where it looks like a fighter has band-aided up a wound, but then you'll get the right styles match to come up and you'll be like, oh yeah, he couldn't wrestle all along, even if it's the one they win, a la Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen, sometimes you just see certain holes are always there. So to your point, George, I think that's what it's going to come down to for me, actually, is where is Oliveira? Not that this is an easy matchup for him, even at his best iteration. Gamrot's always a tough matchup for him, but I do think it's going to answer a lot of where he's at, George, to your point.
Yeah, man, I think this is going to be a good one. So shout out to the UFC for putting this one together. In the chat, people are talking about the Benoit Saint-Denis, Beneil Dariush what I was alluding to. And that's kind of what I'm hearing too. So that would be a good one. And that's, I guess, why Benoit Saint-Denis is not fighting in Rio de Janeiro. But I know a lot of people wanted him to, based off that big win, that big recent win that he had. And he's now on a 2-3 fight win streak after a poor 2024. Another good one. So again, we've been gone 2 weeks. This one's a little old, but let's react to it. It's a big one. RDR is not facing Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. He's facing Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen looked good in his fight in New Orleans, in his home state of Louisiana, against Marvin Vettori. Remember, he lost to Fluffy Hernandez, and so since then he's picked himself up, and now he can get one over on RDR. It would be a big moment for him, and for RDR, he's chasing Nasruddin Imavov. Both of these guys want a piece of the champ, Hamzat Chimaev. Both of them have told me to fuck off recently too.
That is true. I think Imavov is kind of the winner here, right? We talked to RDR last week, and he told us that he thought we looked let down a little bit. And in a way, yeah, it was going to be a good fight, him and Fluffy. But you know what I really wanted was I want them both to have a shot at Hamzat. They have two unique styles, and I didn't want one of them to have to go away. That being said, Brendan Allen's no joke. When he puts things together, he can be a really good fighter. So I think RDR sometimes he can get cracked. So he really has to pay attention in this fight. And I think it's still a good fight. But yeah, I think a lot of us wanted to see that Fluffy fight.
Danny, let's say you're the new matchmaker at the UFC. If RDR looks good over Brendan Allen, does he take over Nasruddin Imavov, or is Nasruddin Imavov the guy right now?
Yeah, I think that matchup lost a lot of fluff. It was Anthony Hernandez was needed in that scenario for either guy to surpass Imavov, because certainly shouts out to Cabral, he's been doing great things, but right now, the status in terms of who's the hottest, who's got the most hype, who's looked the best, RDR and Anthony Hernandez, I would say those are the guys that have really stuck out. So either guy beating either guy would have been just big for either guy's career. So they would have been up there, and they would have passed Imavov. Like Go said, I think the biggest winner here is Imavov. I think RDR has to do something truly, truly special for him to surpass him at this point in time, because you got the win streak. You got a solid win over somebody like Kyle Waralio. It's going to be hard to surpass that guy. So again, I don't want to get RDR to tell me to fuck off as well. But I'm sorry, my man. I think you're going to have to do a lot to get that shot.
Yeah. Dan, you want to weigh in on that matchup, RDR versus Brendan Allen, and what it does for the middleweight division? Your favorite division when they have rematches, I think, right?
Yeah, it's the matchmaker's favorite division, and you just made me laugh picturing Danny Segura as the second coming of Joe Silva. I don't think Danny could be mean enough for that job, but at least I can't picture it. But that was a funny image. I'll just say it sounds like I should have talked to RDR, because I actually like the Brendan, similar to me and Danny's take on the last matchup. I actually like the new one better, which is a surprise, because me, I'm very critical on. Again, guys, it's not just me saying it. What do we just list a bunch of impromptu fights? As a writer, if you're writing, the two words you're using most if you're covering the UFC is rematch and impromptu fight, because that's what we get for literally 3/4 of our main events, guys. It'd be nice to see a main event that actually gets a full camp, but with the schedule they have these guys, and I would have expected RDR to be the one to pull out, right? That being said, Fluffy has had a history of injuries, but from a styles perspective, guys, I think we will be pleasantly surprised in Brendan Allen versus RDR. And if that is the case, well, that'll only help the case of the winner, especially if it is RDR. But yeah, it sounds like you guys pissed him off.
No, he was just having fun.
I think it was one of those buzz off fuck offs. But yeah, I laughed at it, and Imavov a few weeks earlier, same thing. He's like, it's my shot. Somebody's bringing up Randy Brown and Gabriel Bonfim. Yeah, we'll give them some shout out. They're main eventing a main event. A fight night. So it's Steve Garcia and David Onama. So good on those guys. Well, we gotta keep going here. Also, Dikiz, want to give a shout out to him as well. And Joseph Boza. I mean, he comes in with so much knowledge every week. I'm going to interrupt what we're doing here because I think it's big. I'm going to give it to Danny. He is asking, with all that's happening, Danny, do we think that the UFC is saving Ilia Topuria for CBS, the CBS Paramount era, or do you think you could see him pop in on the December card?
No, I think we're gonna have to wait till 2026 to see Ilia Topuria fight again, and it's so unfortunate. Like, something I think Ilia Topuria checks so many boxes in terms of like what you want from a fighter, and you don't have to be a fan of his to be drawn to him. Like the guy delivers knockouts. The guy, you know, has no problem playing the heel, has no problem trash talking. I mean, he's great. But one thing that I absolutely hate, and there's probably the UFC's at fault partly on this, is this activity level. Dude, we're seeing him like once a year. I want to see him fight twice, you know, a bare minimum. So yeah, unfortunately, I do think we see him in 2026. I don't think he'll fight in December, but hopefully I'm wrong.
I'm going to take the last one because we got to move on to UFC 320. There was some fight bookings on the PFL side. Vadim Nemkov is facing Hanan Fajeda, and Chris Cyborg's facing Sarah Collins. It's December 13th, PFL Lyon. That's in France. Look, Cyborg's just an all-time great, and she's saying it. I'm almost done here. This young lady Collins is undefeated. What would this do for her legacy, or what's it do? Look, she's got a ton of belts. She's got a ton of title defenses. What she's chasing is to surpass Amanda Nunes, and I don't know that she's obsessed with this. This is what I'm thinking, as the greatest female fighter ever. She's got a head-to-head loss against her. That sucks, right? But Amanda Nunes also has like 5 losses, whereas Cyborg only has 2, and one of them was to Nunes. The other one was like the first fight of her career before she did like 30 in a row. So yeah, I don't know if Collins helps that case, but at the same time, man, respect to Chris, winning belts everywhere. 5 major belts she holds. The thing that confuses me is PFL has this thing called the Super Fight Championship, which is what Francis Ngannou did when he beat Hanan Fajeda. And then this title, this is right here is a title fight with Hanan Fajeda and Vadim Nemkov. So what's this? Right below the Super Fight Champ? Or are they done? PFL confused the hell out of us, man. And then guess what? Oleg Popov beat Alexander Romanov in a world tournament earlier this year. So he had a belt and 500K. What does that do? And why aren't these guys fighting for this belt? That's the part that's just so confusing and frustrating for me. I hope they figure it out, but I do like the matchups. These are some of the bigger names for the PFL, but they just need to stack cards in 2026 and figure it out because it's confusing as F. All right, let's move on to UFC 320. We finally get to the juicy stuff. One hell of a magnetic pull. I'll use that again. Happening next Saturday, and Goz and I will be hosting a watch along starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Watch the fights along with us, the 4 free ones on the prelims, and then you got a decision to make. $80, you're going to pay it or not? If not, we'll be your eyes and ears and tell you what's happening. That starts at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Pereira is back. Marab in his third lung. He's kind of grown on us. Roundtree versus Prochaska. How's that one not going to suck? Or going to suck? Wait, what am I trying to say? It's going to be great. Zalal versus Emmett. Joe Pyfer returns. Let's go, guys. Goes. If you look at the card on paper, how do you rate it 1 to 10?
Ooh, okay. I'm like Dan. I'm not a big fan of rematches especially when the first one tells such an overwhelming story. They've had a little bit more heat though, and I've warmed up to it. So I'm gonna give it a 9.1.
What?
Wow.
Goes.
Because you know what?
I have some money. I feel like you're being a little generous this morning.
Dude, Khalil Roundtree and Yuri Prochazka, that's gonna be insane. That's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm down with that.
Could I borrow $100 real quick?
Of course.
Danny, what do you rate it? I give it a 9. I'm all in the flat numbers. You guys are all in the decimals, but I give it a 9. How about you, Danny?
8.2.
Okay. What's it lacking, Danny? I mean, 2 title fights, a banger in the future fight, and then some sprinkled in young versus old, Emmett and Zalal, you know, Patchy Mix is getting a second chance. Joe Pyfer is kind of blown up, you know, even though he really hasn't reached that level yet, but he's clicking with some fans, and then, you know, there's some other talent on there. What's lacking?
I mean, if like UFC 300 or UFC 205 is a 10, I don't think this is like within the same stratosphere of 0.9 away or a point away. I think it's a good card. I think 8's a very solid look. As somebody that went through high school and college just getting A's and B's, a B score is totally acceptable, man. It is a great score. it's a good card. I have very little complaints, but there is a rematch. The first fight sucked between Pereira and Ankalaev. Let's be honest. Yeah. I mean, Abis versus Joe Pyfer, I think it's a fun fight. Same thing with Josh Emmett versus Yusuf Salal. Not hating, but I'm just saying I've seen better. That's all.
And he's not lying, folks. I've seen his report cards. He showed me once. I was over at his house. He had a 4.0 junior year of high school, except there was a 2.0 in the fall and a 2.0 in the spring.
I was always in honors. It was like 3.6 and above. These and
Dan Tom, what do you rate it on paper, man? 1 to 10.
You know, I looked at the last pay-per-view. I remember my answer on this show, guys, and I said it was a 7, which seemed low, but I said it had the potential of finishing in the 9, maybe not to 10 range, but close there. And I would argue, despite the being a 5-round boring decision between Chimaev and DDP, the rest of the card did live up, right? But if I gave that one a 7, I got to go 6.5 here, guys. Outside of the top 3 fights, which low key, I'm probably most excited for Prochazka. Yuri Prochazka versus Khalil. Outside of those top 3 fights, it really drops off. You know, we only have 11 ranked fighters out of 28, which sounds like decent, but it's really not. And that's a tricky context to where I hesitate to throw that out there for a measuring stick, guys. But without going fight by fight, it really does a huge drop off. And they've got guys like Patchy Mix buried on what used to be the Fight Pass prelims. I got to give this card a 6.5, and I feel like it has the potential to close in the 7.5 to 9 range, but man, it would have to really deliver to be a 10. And the reason why I give it a 6.5 is even if it delivered, guys, I don't think it gets that credit, not just because of the UFC machine and how it swallows and lacks to promote its fighters, but you don't even have like the Bang Stayer Susurkayevs, like the last one where it's some guy that unless you're Dana's guy, like you're not getting that hype, even if you do a big performance on the prelims. You're lucky if we see the guys week in week. You're lucky if you get the performance bonus if you're on the prelims. You're lucky if you get recognized by your own employer backstage if you're on the prelims. So 6.5, hard 6.5.
All right. They talked me down. I'm going down to an 8.8.
Yeah, we got him.
All right. I don't know, man. I like how Josh Emmett cracks jaws and Yusuf Zalal's got to do that matador and try and get it in on him before Emmett, throws them heavy hands. But I'm excited about this card, especially I love Sandhagen. He's such a well-rounded fighter, and could this be his moment? Because he's really come up short in big fights. And then Merab, does he surpass Dominic Cruz as the greatest of all time? They both have 3 UFC title defenses, right? But Cruz has 2 at the WEC that I give him credit for. So I feel like he's got 5 because the WEC was the WEC when the UFC didn't have 135 and 145. So him and Aldo, whatever they did, I give them that as well. And but and then can Merab get that 4th fight? I don't know. I'm getting way ahead of myself there, but I like it. I'll stick to my 9. Let's go through this real quick. So Ankalaev and Pereira have been beefing. Could this play against Ankalaev, Danny Segura?
I think 100% it can. Pereira is a mastermind of playing mind games with his opponents. And we don't see it because he's not like a Conor where it's very obvious, but like he does these slight little things that just kind of throw off the opponent, like kind of getting into like the whole magic thing where he did with Yuri Prochazka and had them all thinking that there was a spiritual realm, being a big factor in the fight. And I saw the weigh-ins what he was talking about. He was doing something with the eyes and he's like, oh yeah, he's trying to control me or something. And I feel like with Ankalaev, he's kind of doing the same thing and he's kind of gaslighting him, and Ankalaev is buying into it because like he's talking shit to him. Then they meet in person. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not saying anything. And then Ankalaev's like, no, yeah, you did. Here's the proof. And he's getting all like wrapped up in all this. So Ankalaev is someone that that if he fights emotional, I feel like that can cost him. Obviously, Pereira's got that power. So you make one mistake, and you're done. So I'm not saying that's enough for him to lose his belt, but man, I do think that so far the psychological war in the build-up to UFC 320, Pereira's the winner for now.
If Pereira wins, would you be part of the campaigning for a trilogy? Hey, let's just get this over with. Or man, those names we just threw out, the Roundtree, Prochazka winner, Ulberg. They're going to be pissed. Then we got another guy. What's his name? Azamat Marakanov, undefeated. He's slowly creeping up. What are your thoughts here?
First of all, I disagree with the valedictorian. I think it's the other way around. Pereira is so known for being stoic, right? And I feel like maybe Ankalaev's in his head a little bit because he's gotten him a little fired up. And when I see that coming out of Pereira, it worries me a little bit because I think what he's so successful with when the fight starts is his patience and his timing. And if I feel like Ankalaev's getting in his head, I think he's kind of messing with him a little bit. So I don't know. This was, like I said, when it was announced, I was like, why are we doing this again? But now I'm starting to get a little bit more fired up for it. Do I want to see a trilogy? No. It also depends on what the UFC wants, what the outcome. Like, obviously, they probably push one guy a little bit more than the other. So I think if Pereira wins, I don't think we see a trilogy.
Dan, does this go into your breakdowns? Do you just look at the tactics, or are you watching the mental warfare behind the scenes?
So no, that's a great mention, guys. And I always use my measuring stick as Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm, where if you guys remember the weigh-ins, Ronda acted really out of character.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you see someone act out of character, it's almost like a bad sign, right? Like you're like, ooh, this could be bad. Now, sometimes it's just who they are. Like Khamzat Chimaev, he's going to get in the face and act wild like Ronda did to Holly. He kind of does that every time. And, so far it hasn't really affected his style. He is who he is, right? So it's not an end all be all. Then we've got times like Cruz versus Garbrandt where, Dominic Cruz was looking every bit as smart and witty as he was. And Garbrandt was looking every bit as Garbrandt as he was, right? But once they got in the ring, it was this, and it was only for one fight, right? But it was this masterclass. So sometimes that Rousey Holm thing gets flipped on its head. But yeah, I'm getting those vibes here, and I'm almost scared. I'm at that part of the analysis where I'm starting to look into that stuff, which I don't weigh heavily, but I'm scared it might pollute my thing, my analysis, because it's like I'm having the same war that Danny and Goz are having. Not that it's a war, but as far as like it could be an advantage for one guy, but it also could be a disadvantage for that guy, right? It gets real tricky, guys. Real tricky.
Two great historical pulls. I remember that Rousey home weigh-in, and she did kind of go off. Of course, I like that type of stuff. And Rousey was always selling a lot of pay-per-views, so she didn't even need that. But it made it definitely more intriguing. I heard that was the first fight the mom didn't fly to or attend. Remember, she was always front row with the sisters. So who knows what that meant? And also Cody Garbrandt just styled on Cruz, man. That was incredible. That was an incredible title win, honestly. Hey, real quick before we continue with UFC 320, I think this is big. Zuffa Boxing is now also joining the UFC in the broadcast deal with Paramount. So that's where you'll be able to watch boxing if you're a fan of the sweet science as well as MMA. Starting in 2026, that's where Zuffa Boxing will have their fights. So big stuff. It looks like some events will also be available on CBS. Back to the scheduled programming. Danny Segura, how about this Devalis really in his third long, man? What are your thoughts on what I was saying? Can he become the GOAT with a win here over Corey Sandhagen? That would be 4 title defenses, an amazing run leading to winning the title. Like, just that dude's, he's stacking bodies.
Yeah, Merab is absolutely insane. I think there's an argument to make that he is the GOAT right now. And honestly, I go back and forth. I do think that Cruz, his WEC work should obviously count because, as you mentioned, UFC just absorbed it. It's not like they already had existing divisions about that, and he just wasn't fighting the UFC guys. He was fighting the UFC guys the entire time. It was just under different branding.
We got to get off the fence. Who's better right now? Who's the GOAT right now before the fight?
Oh man, that's such a tough one. I'm actually going to side with Merab. I think that he's just beaten better caliber opponents. Like at this point in time, this is the best division there's ever been. And like Henry Cejudo, like all the guys that he's beaten and the way he's beaten them too, like Peter Yan. I mean, I do think it's Merab. I think skills wise, like you can make an argument that Cruz might be even more technically advanced, but we know this is a game that involves more than just technique, and that third long, as you mentioned, has gotten Merab pretty far. So I have him as the GOAT right now, but if you say Dominic Cruz, I don't have a problem with. However, if he wins on Saturday, which the odds makers have him as getting the job done, I think you're going to have a tough time supporting your argument, GG, for Dominic Cruz.
Well, never mind me. It looks like Goz might have a problem. He's got his WEC glove in hand, and he's telling me secretly Danny smells like cheap booze and cigarettes.
Oh.
I gotta think
Why
about
are you
it for a
hating on
little bit.
Cruz?
All
All right,
I
no,
don't
I'm
know.
just kidding. Go ahead,
Probably
Goz.
true, by the way.
Hey, look, here's the deal though. They're
He had
so
a big
close
Saturday
now.
night. It's true.
They're so close statistics wise now that I just kind of turn the page and I go, well, all right, well, what would happen if the prime Dominic Cruz and the prime Merab Dvalishvili fought? I think I'd lean Dvalishvili. I probably have it still Cruz right now going into this weekend, but no matter how Merab gets it done, I think he just overtakes him.
What do you think, Dan Tom? Weigh in on this.
I think Merab could when it's all said and done. But even if he wins and wins in an emphatic fashion, I don't think not. Again, the thing that everybody leaves out of these arguments, whether they're talking about Cruz, BJ Penn, or anybody, we can bring up head-to-heads or who'd win. That's always an unfair argument. Whether we're talking about football or basketball, it's too unfair to make that argument. And we get too caught up in head-to-heads, which are important and stuff for rankings. George can tell us all about that, right? But what these conversations are missing is legacy. What did they do for the division, right? Like BJ was bringing people like The Rock, who's doing the Smashing Machine movie. Like BJ was a guy bringing those people like Jason Statham before social media, before any $1 million deals. Like it was his fights. It wasn't Turkey Al Sheik. It wasn't even Dana's connection or money back then, which he didn't have as much connections and money back then, folks. And Dominic Cruz, not only did he bring the division into the UFC and was the torchbearer there, but he was able to change the game with footwork, making things like, even though it's not scored in our scoring criteria, defense is still important. Defense is still an extremely lacking thing in MMA in 2025. And so is footwork. And Cruz was one of the first guys to do it. And guys still to this day in 2025 are still terrible at defense, even at the higher levels, still have terrible footwork. They're crossing their feet where they shouldn't be. And Dominic Cruz really changed that game. He influenced guys like TJ Dillashaw, and I hate the term neo footwork, but everybody started shifting their stances from 2012 on, guys. You guys were all watching the sport. You know what I'm talking about. I'm preaching to the choir here. And I'm not saying Danny or anybody's wrong. Anybody can have their opinions. What irks me in these conversations is we don't mention the legacy, and you can't mention that off a wins and loss record. You can't mention that off some bullshit speculation on how the older era guy would do against all the stuff that is benefited from, like, oh, Khabib would have washed BJ. Like, yo, BJ was winning titles from that same gym, aka using the same moves, the leg wrap and everything. He did it literally decade before Khabib. He's the one who made that division that the UFC failed 3 and 4 times. That division wouldn't even have been around for Khabib or Conor if it wasn't for BJ. That stuff is left out of it.
And Jens
has a similar stuff. So
and Jens Pulver too.
Jens Pulver, of course,
yeah,
but
he's an OG too. Yeah.
But people will disrespect Jens too to that point, right? Right, Gigi. They won't even mention Jens in the Mount Rushmore. You guys all do the Mount Rushmores. I think we would all have Jens, but the casual fans don't. And it's because when we have these conversations, we don't talk about that importance. And that importance cannot be measured by a wins-loss record.
Good stuff here, guys. Chat, tell us just one word, Cruz or Dvalishvili, who's the greatest bantamweight of all time right now? Not after the fight, not if he wins, not if he finishes. Right now, is it Cruz or Dvalishvili? Let's see what you all think. Pi Abundus in the chat says, before I leave, can I tell who lost to Alexa Tainara again? It was Loma Lukmumbi. Hopefully I got that right. I don't know.
I was curious to see who types Merab and who types Dvalishvili, just to see the spelling. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I just put Merab.
Yeah. Let's see here, guys, real quick, continuing on here with UFC 320. And by the way, folks, hit that like button. It helps, whether it's at the beginning of the show or right now, 54 minutes in, or at the end. Some of you may not be watching live. Somebody was asking, is this live? It is live every Monday, so join us every Monday. Save it. In fact, hit the bell, and that tells you when we're on live. And by the way, after we're done here, the UFC Dana White Contender Series weigh-ins will start on a separate stream. All right. Prochaska versus Roundtree. I think we kind of covered this already, whether it's a title eliminator or not, when we were discussing Ulberg's win. So let's go to Joe Pyfer. Is he the real deal, guys? You know, the UFC kind of pushes certain fighters, and Pyfer is kind of a bad boy. he really hasn't had that epic win. I know Gastelum is a name, respect to him, but Gastelum since then has just kind of been on this decline where now that win's not shining so brightly. And then of course he had the controversial comments about Mexico. Since then he's cleaned them up a little bit, but you know, when Pyfer's on the card, people go, Joe Pyfer's on the card. Goes, what are your thoughts here?
I'm that guy. Joe Pyfer's on the card, but I don't think in any way I'm saying he's getting closer to a title shot. This guy's gonna take out the champ. I'm not that guy yet. I'm not saying he can't get there, but I think it's mostly a little bit of his personality. His fighting style is fun, but I get excited when he's on a card. I'm not really anointing him the next big thing.
Danny, are you excited about the Abu Sipian Pyfer fight? Magomed Joe Pyfer fight. He is the opponent. A lot of people only know Pyfer is on the card, but that's the opponent.
Yeah, no, I like this fight. I think Pyfer is still unproven. I know he's gotten some solid wins, like beating Kelvin Gastelum is not easy, but again, he's been kind of sold to us as the UFC as the guy, right? Like he's a bad dude, and I've yet to. I'm not saying he's not, but I'm not convinced that he is either. So I think this is a very tough fight. I think if he does something special here, I mean, that just kind of builds his case even further. But you know, he's got a tough test. So let's see what happens here.
How about you, Dan? Tom, are you you've seen a lot of film? What's Pyfer showing you? Is he on the come up? Does he look like he could possibly be the real deal?
I'm disappointed because he's booked on a domestic card. I only want to see Joe Pyfer booked on international events in other countries, folks.
Spicy food countries like Thailand, Mexico.
Yeah. Let's get some color in there for old Joe. All that aside, though, I've been a defender of his skills as far as being underrated in the grappling department and wanting him to show those off, but he hasn't really been showing those off. Even in spots that you think would be a showcase spot. So I'm on the fence right now. I was actually more of a defender than most, or more than most would suspect I would be of a guy like Pyfer. But yeah, I'm more on the fence here.
Speaking of color, what do you guys think? I went to the beach this weekend.
Yeah, looking good, buddy.
You guys got the hair, but I got the tan.
You do got the tan.
Although I need to lose weight, man. My face is round. I look like a basketball with a mouth. But anyway. Patchy Mix, I'm not even gonna say fraud check. That dude was a gangster at Bellator. He did a lot of great stuff. He had a rough outing though, for sure. What do you think, Danny? Can this be what brings him back if he were to have a nice finish, the takedown, the body lock triangle, and then just an eventual submission after some ground and pound and a series of moves where he's just an expert? Patchy Mix.
Man, I think Patchy Mix this fight's like critical, and I think he's almost fighting for his career. I don't think he's gonna get cut if he loses, but he's not young. He is 32 years of age. If he wants to do something special in the UFC, it's now. And he dug himself in such a hole with that debut. He looked terrible. That if he were to look bad and even win here, but if he were to look bad, I don't know how he kind of bounces back, at least even just with the fan base, right? Like he's got to do something special here, look good, look dominant, get a finish, and just kind of forget and put behind that debut. But if there's something that's still stringing along from that UFC debut, man, I think it could be really bad for his career. So excited to see this because obviously a lot at stake, as I mentioned. And I do think he can turn it around, but yeah, critical moment in his career, I would say.
Jacob Wicklax is his opponent, and they are on the early prelims. We're running out of time, and I don't want to interrupt Dana White Contender Series, the stream there, because they go quick. All 10 of them weigh in within 15 minutes. So let's go through some other highlights from UFC 320. What else are you looking forward to that we may not have discussed? Goes.
I think Zalal and Emmett, only because it kind of started with us a little bit. And I think no matter what, I know Josh didn't want this fight. I think it'd still be really fun. I think Zalal's going to bring it, but I think Emmett might be too much.
What Goes is referring to is at the Fight Expo, we asked Zalal. He goes, I want Emmett. Then we asked Emmett a few minutes later, and he didn't say who, but he did not want it, and it's been made. Another highlight, Danny.
I'm gonna go in the main event of the prelims, and you're probably gonna make me repeat this name again, but Ateba Abega Gautier. I believe that's how it's said. Probably not. But man, this
He's a
guy, I
killer.
saw him debut in Mexico. I was covering that fight night. Dude, the guy is just a complete unit. If he's able to get more scary knockouts, man, he's gonna be talked about big time at 185 pounds. So yeah, dude's legit. Well, dude looks legit. Let's see if he is legit. So excited for that one.
That's a good
Is
one.
he
Man. He's a
the
killer.
biggest unit you've seen this year, or a big one other?
He's huge. Honestly, probably, yeah.
All right, Dan Tom, how about you, man?
I can't go after that. No, I'll just say I just want to add context. I know people hate context because I just mentioned all that historical context. People are just like, you know, I think everybody's like shows how old we are, guys. But I'll just say instead of highlighting a prelim, go learn your history, guys. Go watch some old things in the sport. When I got into basketball in the 90s, I went back and watched the classic series between LA and Boston. You guys know what I'm talking about. Like, you did your homework, right? You had respect, right? Like, what happened to that, guys? Like, I don't what happened to that. We just look at what's in front of us, forget all about history and context. Again, have your opinions, but just at least acknowledge the other side. That's something that we can't do. It's all my king, your king. God forbid we actually acknowledge context, folks, and nuance. That's all.
Well, and it's all right there on the UFC Fight Pass. I mean, it's free and
Yeah.
it's an extensive library. We used to mail each other VHS tapes and, you know, or
Dude.
ask for links to fights. It was kind of hard back in the day. You know, Dan referenced early prelims. What channel did you use? Because I mean, they've been on Facebook, FX,
Fuel TV.
Fuel TV. Yeah, like we didn't
Yeah.
get all this like you guys get it. So enjoy it for sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give a shout out to Puna Soriano. A few times in
Yeah.
the gym, going back. So he won on Dana White Contender Series. Then he won a couple fights. Then he had a bad run, and I remember going, "Could you go to welterweight?" And it was like, "Nah," you know. But he finally did, and he's actually been really looking good, pretty scary himself. So hopefully he can continue it. He's an extreme couture guy, you know. He's a nice fella, and but I think he's found himself, you know, some new life there. About Vanderlei Silva, just because I mentioned it earlier, he boxed in an event on Saturday. He's like 48 or 49, and afterwards there was a brouhaha. You can Google it and see it. In fact, on Junkie we covered it. That's where the starfish came out. Some guy clipped them. The guy that clipped them was the son of the opponent who Vanderlei had headbutted to get disqualified. So, you know, it all kind of comes together where you see Fabricio Verdum, Dita, who's a longtime partner in crime for Vanderlei Silva. He's the guy that socked Chael Sonnen when they had. You know, I think I'm losing the audience. They're like, when did that happen? They some of them only joined us in the pandemic, but yeah, Chael and Vanderlei hosted UFC Tough Brazil, and they had a fight too. So all that stuff, look it up and have fun with it.
It looked like Goze knocked him out, by the way. Like, you shouldn't have said that. I wish they didn't identify him. We could have started a rumor and said it was Goze. It looked like Goze was in there throwing bows.
A little bit, yeah.
Hey guys,
Just back from Brazil. How's your hand feeling, Goze?
great job with this, you know, Perth and the fight bookings and everything. Shout out to Dan Tom, Danny Segura, Brian Garcia, aka Goze. And thank you all for tuning in and checking us out. Please, again, hit the like button on the way out. Kindly consider subscribing to the channel. It's free. And this week, it's going to be blowing up with all kinds of content by the best team in the business. And we'll see you all next week here for Spinning Back Clique as we unpack UFC 320. Go out and be a champion.